Greetings, greetings, and salutations is what a friend of mine always says. Um, give you a couple of seconds to decide if you want to come join me today. I couldn't deny the push inside me to connect with you today and just share some thoughts I'm having, and I'd love to see your comments as well. So, if you're not here in Anchorage, Alaska, let me tell you a little bit about what we are experiencing here. Usually, Januaries are dark, very cold, and lots of snow. And to give you an idea, last year we had 135 plus inches of snow, a record breaking snowfall in all the history of keeping track of these things. The year before that, we had a record breaking year. So for the past 2 years, we've had record breaking snowfall. This year, and last year, right around the middle of January, we had what we call a cold snap. And one weekend it went down to minus 17 degrees. And today it's raining, it's windy, and though I'm not on the main roads, which I'm sure are much better than the back roads, we have been experiencing a lot of ice here in Anchorage. That leads to people ice skating in the middle of the street. And it also leads to a lot of people ending up in the ER because you take a slip and it's easy to do. You know, they've sold out of cleats. I'm so grateful that I have the strength and the health earlier in the week to use the warmer weather to put every drop of ice melt I had on my driveway, which I share with other people. The ice was like 3 inches deep. And over the course of 2 days, I just kept, chipping away at the ice and clearing it and using the salt. And so that has helped a little bit on a day like today. But I guess I just also wanted to talk about, I'm always thinking about the new design for living. It's what I think about all the time because it's always in me as an active filter through which I look at things that are happening. And I can't help but want to talk a little bit about these LA fires because there's so many spokes in this wheel. So the first spoke is, I am not affected. I have not lost my home and everything I own. And I can only imagine and feel into the tragedy, the trauma, the drama of that kind of a moment where you have a short amount of time to grab a handful of things and you come back to your home and it's gone. And everything you've ever owned is burnt to ashes. Now, certainly this has happened all over the world. It's happened in Lahaina. It happened in California in the Paradise fires. There are active fires going on right now across the globe, right? So we're having a very focused attention on what's happening in our own country, in the state of California. And so for me, I just wanted to touch on a couple of different things that are affecting me. So one of the things I talked about on my show, the Camille Conte show, you can find it on Mixcloud, you can listen tonight on KMBA radio at 6 o'clock, is how Mother Nature levels the playing field. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, how rich you are, or how not rich you are. It doesn't matter. Mother Nature has the ultimate power to level the playing field. And it was quite an experience to watch different people be focused on in the news, and yet everybody had the same experience. Why? Because at the core of our being, we're the same. And whether you're an actor or a neighbor, the fires have no understanding of that. And so that to me was very powerful, how Mother Nature will always level the playing field. And the other thing that's really fascinating about this situation is, and again, I'll talk about it from my perspective of the old design model and the new design model. You know, in the old design model, and we see it playing out, which comes out of separation and duality, is clearly blaming. And it's focused on the effects and the conditions and the responses, and it's seeking answers, and it's seeking mostly though to blame even before there are answers, right? How quickly did the fire of politicizing this tragedy become the norm and the natural for many here in America? For me, I used to say things like, that's disgusting. Today I just say, well, that's the old design model. That's what inherently is built into that old way, which of course is what's changing. But I thought, well, look how fascinating this is. Not to say it's not appropriate to seek answers, to do investigations, and to understand what happened. However, as so many of these firefighters have said, both active and retired, with 100-mile-an-hour winds, who really knows if anything could have allowed the firefighters to get in front of and contain these fires. Now, of course, we'll never know because it's happened. But I guess what I'm saying is, in the new design model, we certainly investigate and seek to understand what went wrong so that we can do something better next time. But in the new design model, we stretch the canvas of our assessment and assignment of blame and responsibility to include ourselves. See, it's a lot more comfortable, and it's a lot easier to just stay focused on it's these people's fault because of their political affiliation, or it's this person's fault because they were not in the state, and all of that. But in the new design model, we pull way back and we say, oh my gosh, like, how many times have we been given the opportunity as humanity to turn things around? How many times have we been given the opportunity to take a personal look at our own lives and the way we think about living, the earth, our relationship to it, our level of consumption, and do the correction, the personal correction, so that we are better lined up with the truth? And so good news is there's a lot of people out in social media and the news that is talking like this. Climate change, global warming, how codes for housing put far too many people in a far too tight community. You know, so there's that spoke in this wheel. And, you know, I look at the wind today here in Anchorage and I think, wow, what would it be like to have embers blowing down the block and across town, igniting randomly because of the winds? What would that be like? You know, the other thing that's incredible about these fires is it's certainly not like there are just homes that have burnt. Not that the word just is appropriate. But what I'm trying to say is what you realize is complete cities, towns, and communities are gone. Not just houses, churches, schools, stores, malls, restaurants. The infrastructure of communities has been decimated, reduced to ashes. So when the human spirit talks about we will rebuild, which is, I'm with you on that, it's just incomprehensible to me how that will happen on such a large scale. And yet, what is left to do but to come together and rebuild? That's the other thing that is pressing up against my heart. You know, for some reason, we seem to continue to use or need catastrophes to remember the truth, which is that we love each other. We need each other. We are each other. And for me, what really brought me to the camera today and connecting with you, and what brought tears to my eyes just a few minutes ago, is that you wake up to the trance that we oftentimes are in and have been in. We wake up to how we bought into the narrative that we are separate from each other, that we have in our ego mind gone into this frenzy of duality and separation and us and them and Republicans and Democrats and white people and not rich and poor, the black and white of the old design model. And yet, what do we see? We see the truth. We see the same people, the politicians, news cycles, social media, narratives, personal belief systems. What does it show us? That the very people that we are told to hate because of their skin color, that the very people we have allowed ourselves to believe we should be afraid of, that the very people who we are being told need to be removed from their homes in this country, turn out to be the very people that are not only being affected by this fire, but the very people that are responding to the call to help. When I saw those videos of firemen and women from Mexico walking together in unison to come to the aid, it made my heart burst wide open with tears. You know, when I saw the video of the firefighters from South Africa at the airport singing in unison to declare their arrival and their solidarity, oh my gosh. To see those incredible pilots that, not just from Canada, but also here, but for sure the Canadian pilots that are coming in with these planes that are scooping up water from the ocean and bay surface and then flying in a way that we're told you shouldn't fly to disperse that water and the retardant is nothing short of heroic, brave, and miraculous. It's just an amazing moment to feel into all that this catastrophic event that is not over yet is showing us. And I wanted to just come here for a few minutes today to share that with you, because as I said on my show this week, if you got a heart that's beating and you have some sort of awakened consciousness of our interaction with each other, you're feeling this situation and you're responding. Perhaps you've already donated. Whatever it is you're doing, you're taking it into your spiritual practices, right? And then you get to a point where you really can't do anymore because there's just not a whole lot left for us to do outside of what we can do. And how important it is to take that pressure that's building up against us, because we look at this scenario and we're like, oh my gosh, how can I help? What can I do? And we turn it towards what's local. We take that feeling of that inherent desire to help. We turn it towards our own backyard while being mindful of the mind's resistance, because it's easier to get involved in things that are not affecting us than it is to get committed to things that are. And in varying degrees. Maybe for some of us, a lot of us, homelessness affects us because we drive and we see it, right? Others of us, it affects more deeply because we're active in the solution. Or like our friend Duke Russell and his wife Marie, who are, continuing to feed people and others like them that are doing that kind of work. But I'm just saying, this for me is such a massive wake-up call, and it's also a massive opportunity to understand the change, not that's coming, but that is already here. The other night I had this profound question come through me because I'm doing something very different at night now. You know, ever since the new year, if not before then, I have a conscious ending to my night because I can just keep going. I tend to get very lit up in the evening. That's when I'm just like, oh, right. You know, the whole world is, coming down to a nighttime and sleep mode. And I just pick up on that energy and I'm like, let's go, right? So, but that doesn't always work well for the next day. So I'm trying to put a conscious end to my productivity. And then I'm sitting with a candle lit and just really thinking and contemplating and allowing the quiet and the stillness to take over my environment so that I can hear what the silence is saying. And turns out it's saying a lot. You got to get quiet and still. Well, I have to get quiet and still to be available to the information that is beyond the chaos, the information that is beyond the confusion, the guidance that is beyond the uncertainty, because it is there. But in my personal experience, I can't necessarily access that if I am very caught up in the 3D world of effects. And this is a wonderful time. Winter is a wonderful time to have contemplation and the idea of quiet and darkness and stillness as a practice to not only decompress and to bring your nervous system down to a more healthy rhythm and pace, but like I say, to also commune with your own heart and your soul. And the question that came up for me the other night was kind of intense. And the question was, what can I do right now to help the most amount of people in the quickest amount of time? That's the kind of urgency I live with. That's the kind of urgency that dominates my thinking all day and all night long. That's the kind of question that counsels my action steps. I was looking at all the things that I do or my mind tells me I have to do that has nothing to do with anybody else but myself and my immediate future. And not to say, obviously, there's anything wrong with that. You got to take care of yourself. That's not what I'm saying. But I had this moment when I realized how a whole nother set of action steps would really be for the people, would really take my gifts and talents in a way that I have no certainty about because it's new. But when I ask myself, what can I do to help the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time, I come back to the same thing, which is this, which is connecting with the people, which is sharing with the people what I'm thinking about and the things I've learned and the new design for living and the template that it's offering us and why it's important to, give a shit about the new way and why fear is the worst place that we can stay because you become paralyzed by fear. And fear is a natural element in the old design model. Because in the old design model, everything comes out of separation and duality, okay? Everything comes out of a template that says, hi, Adam, thank you, I appreciate it. In the old design model, it's anchored in everything is outside of ourselves. And that's what this big awakening in part is about. Because we're seeing what's happening to the authority we assigned our power to. That's why in the new design model, the first thing we do is, first of all, forgive myself, the others, and the situation. The second thing I do is I take a deep dive, a brutally honest, with self-compassion and self-forgiveness as my guide, a deep dive with a fine-tooth comb. What's my accountability in this experience? What could I have done differently that I can do differently the next time? Like that kind of stuff is super important these days. Why? Because every choice we make is creating the outcome. Every choice we make. So these days, I'm deep into the language of high vibe, frequency, vibrational frequency, timelines, the new design, the old, right? And as a result, like, I tell you what, I'm having some mystical experiences, man. I'm just like, wow, it's true. That which we cannot see is actually more real than what we can. And it takes a long time. It took me a long time to believe that, but I have had enough experiences to understand why that's really true. But what I'm wanting to share with you today is what I was able to see and learn since the beginning of the year, and it's only like the 12th. So 12 days of compacted, intense, accelerated learning, lessons being shown. If you make these choices, you will have these experiences because the outcome is inherent in the choice. And the choice has a vibrational frequency to it. If you're making a choice out of fear, that frequency can only create an outcome that is a match to that frequency. It's just the way life works. Whether you believe it or not has nothing to do with how it actually works. That's why I'm so committed to helping us have a crash course in how life works so that you can get closer to aligning with how it works so that it can start working for you and you can start working with it. But in the old design model, if you're making decisions out of fear, you will perpetuate what it is you don't want to experience because that's the formula of manifestation. And so when I was looking at the frequency of my choices and again, I'm speaking in third person, but that's what I got today. Though I know it's me and I'm not disconnecting from myself, I'm just doing it for the purpose of storytelling, is like when I look at the decisions I'm making based upon the momentum of the person I've been because of the beliefs I have been participating in and agreeing with, it's just going to repeat the same outcome. Though in that experience, I have these moments where I touch and I experience this other version of myself. And I'm so grateful for that. However, at this point in my experience, I'm alive for one reason only, and that is to be that Camille, to be that version of myself that is different and is in a higher frequency and is in oneness and unity consciousness and has fully embraced the commitment of the new design for living because it will change your life. But here's the good news. At least in this way, you have dominion over the changes that are happening. In the old design model, because you feel like it's happening to you and you're a victim and you don't have control because the forces and the power are outside of you, then you're sitting and waiting. And it's a terrible position to be in because you're unempowered. In the new design for living, we're like, no. In the new design for living, we get it. We're the architect. We're the co-creator. We've gone through the changes. At least I have. And many of us are. I'm still going through them. That's why I'm sharing it with you today. And I hope that, this is interesting for you. And if it's not, that's fine. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about how this might be going on for you. Now, I know a lot of people are watching football today, and that's fantastic. It's a choice. You get to do that, be entertained, watch sports. You love it. That's great. Every choice produces a timeline. So that's kind of how I see this word timeline. That every choice produces an outcome, and that outcome is my life. So when I looked at this decision that I was believing was in my best interest, I realized that it was. However, then I was shown, well, what would it be like if you made a decision that was in the best interest of humanity? Do you believe that your best interest is also in the seed and the purpose of being here right now at this time to be in front of this microphone as many times as I possibly can in the hopes of using local as a means for change? So that's a little bit of what is on my heart today. And like I say, I am curious to know what your thoughts are about any of this. My tripod is actually sitting on top of a massive pile of notes from the last 4 or 5 years about the new design for living. And I know a lot of times I get really overwhelmed, because there's so much to say and there's so much to share. And it's so important to me to take on this role and to be the messenger for people like myself who are in between the two worlds. It's like, okay, yeah, we can see the old design model is falling away. We can see it on fire. We can see it collapsing. We can see changes happening and more changes coming. But what we can't see is what's coming. We can't see. And this is the crucial piece of the new design for living. In the new design for living, we get comfortable not knowing in the way that we have to know in the old design model. In the old design model, the mind is the leader, right? In the old design model, we have to know. Give me data, facts, give me certainty that this change is going to be good for us. It's going to be successful. Well, guess what? That's not how change works. You can do assessments. You can do all that stuff. But in the new design model, it's not the mind and knowing. In the new design model, it's the heart and feeling. In the new design model, we realize that feelings are the key indicator of whether something is a high vibe or a low vibe. You experience it every day. You walk into a room, you go to an event, you're like, wow, this feels great. I'm going to stay. You walk into a room, you walk into an event, you're like, this doesn't feel right. I'm not quite sure I'm going to stay here a while. It's already happening, right? But what the new design model does is elevates it to the level of society. It elevates it to the level of government. In the old design model, politics defined the human vision and condition. In the new design model, humanity and the vision for humanity defines policies and politics. You can feel the difference. One is happening to us that we don't have a lot of control over. The other one we're designing. And so that's the big thing for today. Remember, you're the architect. You are the one with the power. And the old design model has gone out of its way through fear, to convince us that the power is outside of ourselves. It's gone out of its way to convince us that, in fact, you best rely and follow the guidance of the power outside of you because they know better. At least that's my programming. And then when I woke up to not only the lie of that or the inaccuracy of that or the limiting truth about that, sure, I can accept that there's things outside of me that give me information that didn't originate within me and it's helpful and guides me. However, over the course of the last 15, 20 years, I've developed a relationship with my intuition, my instinct, my inner source, the intelligence that breathes me and handles all the functions of my body. The intelligence that knew a rose and stuffed it into a bud and then stuffed it into a seed and then is the dirt that has within it everything necessary for the fullest bloom, right? And then for the sheer enjoyment of the unfolding emergence has these invisible laws of growth that we can't see. We don't know what the hell cracks open a seed, draws forth a bloom. Nobody ever sees that, but we believe something does because we plant every season, right? So as you can see, there is no shortage of information about the new design for living. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity today to not only see what might be yours to do, to help wherever. You know, I think about the people in Lahaina. I followed that story long after the headlines dropped it and what that was like for them. An area of that island that lost everything and the response. You know, yet last night there was a powerful video from this kid on Instagram, and he was from the Carolinas where that hurricane just ripped through last year. And he was angry, and I understood and felt his appropriate anger. And what he was bringing to our attention was that when he lost his home in that storm last year in the Carolinas, I think outside of Asheville, he had to prove to FEMA that he was worthy, this is my summation of his narrative, of getting the $750. Now, I thought the $750 that they got and the $750 that the Lahaina people got, I thought that was like money that they got. this young man was talking about it being a loan, which, again, I haven't had a chance to really follow up on. The other thing he said that I'm going to check on right after I finish my time with you is that our government has recently promised to either be a part of the 100% of the rebuild, or there was some financial commitment. And he was saying, that's outrageous. He was basically saying, where's the standardization of response? Why am I getting $750, which won't do anything to help me rebuild, when perhaps there's a much fuller response, right? And so these are the moments that are giving us the opportunity to decide how we're designing what's next. Because in the new design model, I would say there has to be a standardization of response, whether it's LA, the Carolinas, Hawaii. What is the standardized response based on principle and practicality, right? That is how we as a people, through talk shows and town halls and these kinds of moments right now, how we can use what's happening as a reference point to what isn't working, and not to wait for those outside of us to change, certainly to help them change and to watch if they change. But what's ultimately the opportunity here is for us to realize that right now, this moment, we are in a historic opportunity to wake up to the power that we have within ourselves, that was put there for the purpose of being co-creators, not just of our own lives, not just for our families, our workplace, our spiritual communities, our cities, our state, our country. The whole thing is absolutely so wide open right now. So if you're in a situation, or you're watching what's happening anywhere in the world, and people are fixing blame at the cost of removing all of us from the equation, I got nothing. I mean, that's not interesting to me. Sure, it will be interesting to understand the whole thing about the water and the fire hydrants. However, the most important thing is looking at this truth that it is set up to divide us. It's done it very well. We have bought into it. We got things coming up that are testing our ability and our willingness to truly stand in oneness. It's not necessarily easy, but it is doable, especially when you see it from the perspective of programming. So that's what I wanted to share with you. In the new Design for Living, I talk about how we go from global to local. And I talk about how the shift is to local, and what is mine to do in my own community to raise the frequency in a way that matches the raising of my own frequency. It's unique to each of us. Every one of us has an assignment. And when we all respond to our assignment, that creates the whole, right? So we all need each other. And we all ideally need to be doing our best to live from this kind of questioning. Now, granted, you're an employee and you got families, you're probably working 2 jobs. Why? Because the old design model has decided that it won't raise the minimum wage across the board in our country. I have a side hustle that pays $11.85 an hour. That's the minimum wage in Alaska. Humbling. There are tips involved, so that's part of why that's maintained as the hourly wage. But I have total understanding why people have to work 2 jobs. If you are not in a situation that has created an opportunity for you, So anyway, I just wanted to come here and connect and see how everyone is doing, and to see how any of this lands in your own thinking about what's going on. All I can say is that with regards to local, there's an opportunity for me to do something local with radio. And the old design model has my mind pointing out to me how it's a volunteer gig, right? The old design model is, it's still informing me, but my relationship to it has changed drastically. Because when I think about that question, what can I do to help the most people in the quickest amount of time? It always goes back to radio, and what would it be like if I could have a local radio show in Anchorage and use my years of experience to talk like this on a radio station that people locally can tune into? What would it be like to take phone calls and get this conversation going? So I will let you know. I did make a decision last night, and the new version of Camille does not go back on her decision. So that's why, I'm probably saying it out loud today, because it's reinforcing that I've made a decision, and I'll let you know more about that. So anyway, Ted. Hello, Ted. Good to see you. Oh, look at this. You can bring them on your video. Ooh, who wants to come on my video? Let's see. How do you do that? How would I look at the comments? Adam, bring them on. Ted, bring them on. Well, I'm not quite seeing the comments section anymore. I just see the full version of this video, but bring them on your video. Adam, you want to come on my video? Let's see here. You were there first, Adam. Ask Adam to join the live broadcast. All right, I'm going to send the invite. They can join your broadcast. They can't join your broadcast. All right, let's see. All right. Anyway, I love you. Take care of yourself. And remember to ask yourself as often as you possibly can, what lights me up? What lights me up? And be mindful of what the answers are coming from your heart. And see if you can take a couple of steps walking towards that today. And join me in being brave and courageous, because when you're taking a leap into the unknown, it's an act of faith, because you understand that the only way to leap is to leap. The only way to go is to go. You can't play the game on the sidelines. You got to jump in, And so I'm jumping in, and I know you are too. I love you. Good to see you, Ted and Adam. Thank you so much for watching, and you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.